mean, I don't know if other people could live here, but I do. I love it.
Well, one of the things that we immediately noticed, Jeff, when we connected with you is you absolutely, this is really the overriding thing for me, my takeaway from the entire experience and the follow-up weekend that we're going to talk about soon, is that we're all spiritual family. You and I and Chris and I and Joni and I and Chris and then all of us have been traveling together in spirit in many lifetimes together.
Oh, yeah.
And
Absolutely.
When Joni and I sat down and we looked at each other, it was like, yeah, it's you, and I had the same thing with you, and I had, and obviously Chris and I have it, and Tom and Chris and I have it. We all have it. It was such an intense sense of spiritual family reunion, and that's really the key for me of the entire experience. Chris, you had some thoughts on that, right?
Yeah, I had a thought. I wanted to say I agree with you completely. What I walked away from with this whole thing was, Jeff belongs there.
Yeah.
Jeff, I think it was like predestined that's where Jeff needed to be.
Absolutely.
Oh, definitely.
Without a doubt. Number one. And number two, Jeff was saying how, when we went up there, he wasn't saying anything to us, and you and I were just rattling things off. I mean, just kind of, we worked really well together, obviously, Victor, and we were bouncing things off each other. And I could just see in his face, like, he was like, wow, they're getting it. They're actually coming up with what I'm experiencing every day. And it was just like you could see the validation in his face, and just like he just took like a deep breath and was like, okay, this is real, this is really happening. And I love that. I love the look on his face when we were just coming up with these things that he was experiencing. That was pretty awesome to me.
Absolutely.
That was good.
Absolutely. So in any event, the takeaway, one other thing happened that day is that there was a tree stump in the middle of the forest, and there were some branches that were cast about. And I had this overwhelming sense of being taken over by a shaman and acting in the shaman's stead with my physical body to, number one, to start doing a rededication of this place. Number two, to clear away some energy that was there, and I actually picked up this wonderful pine branch and used it to start sweeping energy away. Number three, I found a special stone. It was a stone that was filled with mica, gray stone with very shiny mica, and something told me to put it into the center of the tree stump as an anchor point. Other folks, including Chris and Jeff and the others who arrived, added stones to it, and that sort of became the center place of all the energy activity.
Absolutely.
And we just decided that we absolutely had to come back and revisit this location and bring the spiritual family, the intuitives and the investigators and the psychics and the people who really have heart and love, and bring them back to this place. And at this point, I'd like to introduce our wonderful friend and sister, Joni May. And Joni, good evening.
Good evening.
Joni, why don't you tell our listeners a little bit about yourself and your most recent books and all of your books and what you've been up to since the last you were on the show, and what your impressions were about the initial contact concerning Jeff's house.
Well, people are going to get tired of me. I've been on shows so many times. I'm an author. I have 11 books. My latest book is Devil's Toy Box. I primarily write true paranormal stories, although I do write some fiction. I've been friends with Jeff for years, and I first encountered his house there. During the winter, he had a fundraiser to help save somebody's dog that had cancer and needed surgery. So I teach a Paranormal 101 class, and I thought it was great to be able to bring my students because they were just chomping at the bit to have a chance to investigate. And so we came up to the house, and it was incredible for us because we all had experiences that night. It just ranged everywhere. Like, we did encounter the little girl, and we didn't know that there was a little girl before we got there. We didn't know really anything that was there. But we were getting a tapping sound, and we were all hearing it. And so I said, well, this would be something. I do this a lot. I'll say, if this is you, tap once for yes, once for no. And we had a conversation going on with this little girl for about 20 minutes, and it was just dead on. And we learned that she lived in the area, and she came to the barn area to see the horses, and it was incredible. So I was really thrilled when I got invited back and had a chance to check it out.
And what was your sense of our reconnection at the Salem Paragon, all of us?
Oh, Oh, it was amazing. It's like meeting your soul family. I really do
That's
believe that people reincarnate together in groups, and when you see them, you know them. It's an instant connection, and I felt that with all of you, and Sandy as well. So it felt like we were instantly comfortable with each other, and there was none of that dancing around when people are just getting to know each other.
Exactly.
It's like known each other for decades.
Yeah, one of my beliefs is that in terms of spiritual growth and experience and reunion of spiritual family, that when you're ready for the connections to start taking place, they start taking place. And I think we are all ready, and we're all ready.
I agree with that. I have to say something. You're right about that, because I can go back 2.5 years ago when we first started working together, and I was making connections with people, but they never really stuck. Okay? Then once you and I really connected with each other and started doing Second Sight together, all these people started coming into our lives. And now it might have been happening to you before that. I don't know. I can't speak for you. But for me, it really started about 2.5 years ago, where all these amazing people were coming into my life and your life together. And like Joni said, it was no dancing around. We just spoke like we'd known each other forever, and it was seamless. It was easy. It was like it was supposed to be. It was beautiful.
And speaking of spiritual family, let's bring in our brother Tom Gillespie. Tom, good evening.
Good evening, guys. How are you?
Wonderful. Tom, why don't Chris and you describe how you guys first met? I think that's an important part of the story.
Okay, well, I'll start it.
I'll
start it, Tom. Tom, what happened was I made an event. I was doing a show on Second Sight about exorcism, and some guy from Ohio named David Howard attacked me, on the invite. And I'm thinking to myself, this guy doesn't know me. And he's telling me he's has this great radio show, and I'm a fraud, and blah, blah, blah. And go ahead, Tom, you could take it over from there.
Well, at the time, Chris was had a co-host that was very verbal, and Chris then took over and was calling this guy D-word. So, of course, defending, not that it's like Chris was defending, but of course I went in, I'm like, he called you a D, but basically I was protecting my brother that I think
you could say it, Tom, you could say he called me a dick.
He called Chris
I called him a dick.
All right, Chris called him a dick, and I'm like, he called you a dick. You called him a dick, didn't you? Just like antagonizing him a little bit, because Chris did absolutely nothing, and I don't like when someone is getting bullied. And it just bothered me. So, and then at that point, I met up with Chris at the event at the Crusher Mansion, and I just brought him a cigar, because I knew from the pictures, bringing this man a cigar. And from that, I think, Chris, you asked me in the group, like 2 days later.
Yeah, 2 days later. Guys, we talk on the show all the time about, working with people that you're comfortable with, that you respect. And I saw right from the get-go that Tom was a guy who did things the right way. He was a man of respect, and that resonates with me. And I just knew. I said, I want them to be part of my team. And I asked him to be part of the team, and he jumped at it. And we've been best friends ever since.
Yeah, thank you for the compliments, Chris. I'll send you that $20.
And the other beautiful part is that Tom has a beautiful fiancée by the name of Jackie, and Jackie was a part of his activities when they were living down here in the New York area. They moved up to Massachusetts, actually not too far from Salem and not too far from where Jeff lives, and we had the opportunity of getting together with them. Was about a year that we hadn't seen you, Tom, right? Maybe a year and a half?
Yeah.
And went to dinner with Tom and Jackie, and I told them point blank that night that when they are ready, and they are getting ready soon, I'm telling you, you're getting ready soon, Mr. Gillespie, I am going to officiate your wedding. It's going to be my pleasure to marry you and Jackie. So I'm looking forward to that. And Jackie was also an integral part of the investigation at Jeff's. We'll talk about that more later. But in the meantime, let's bring in, who do we have on the line there? Okay, we talked about Joni's friend Sandy McLeod. Sandy, good evening.
Hello, folks.
Wonderful to have
you
with us again tonight. Just wonderful. Sandy, why don't you tell our listeners a little bit about yourself, how you and Joni connected, and what brought you to Jeff's house that weekend?
Sure. I started investigating about, it's a little more than 10 years now. And after a few years of learning, attending conferences, and starting out slowly, I decided that I wanted to start a meetup for people who were interested in the paranormal but didn't have experience. And so I started the meetup, and actually I took over one that had been kind of lying there dormant for a while. And one of the first meetups I scheduled was for a location near our place, our home in central Massachusetts, the Clinton Tunnel. It was an old abandoned radio tunnel. Train tunnel. Sorry. And lo and behold, Joni showed up to the meetup, and we immediately clicked, kind of like what you've been talking about, people who just click right away. And she happened to mention that she was going to visit her folks in Indiana and her sister, and she had rented out Waverly Hills for the night. And in effect, I invited myself along. So, and we've been investigating ever since. And I met Jeff that way. He came to a meetup, and we clicked, the three of us, and, there's just keeps making connections.
That's
so,
right.
yeah. And so that's how I ended up.
It seems like forever ago.
I know, doesn't it? And we also began, at least I started noticing that I was developing a sensitivity that I could, while I was on an investigation, I could feel that when there was a ghost in the room, and after a little while I could then tell whether it was male or female, and, kept moving up that way. And Joni was on her own journey with that, and as was Jeff. So the three of us had that in common as well.
And it was just wonderful, Sandy, again, when we connected with you, it was like family meeting again, just a wonderful reunion of family. And also with us that weekend was Paul Titus. Paul cannot be with us tonight, but Jeff, why don't you tell our listeners a little bit about Paul and how he fits into your organization?
Paul, I grew up with Paul, and so reconnected with him on Facebook. So together with Paul, my brother, myself, and we get another girl, Sherry, we have a group where we go out and people call us up and we go to their houses and we see what's going on. And so, we've actually, since that case, we've done some really interesting stuff. We've done a case where a lady who died in 9/11 was at a house and she was haunting people, and so we kind of figured out her story. We've helped a little girl that there was this I would say mentally ill ghost that was in her room, and we've done some really good stuff lately. It's just keeps popping up. I did a little thing with Pete Jude. Me and Paul went out there. Pete Lavasco. We went out to see someone he knows, and
that's my buddy.
Yeah, so together, what Paul does like the audio and everything, and he checks it all. Because me, I basically, once the investigation's over, I don't even think about it when it's done. It's just kind of, I'm done with it at that point. So he's a good part of our team.
And he was wonderful. He was doing the controlling on all of the cameras that were located all over the property that night, and he did a great job. And again, someone who also feels like family when we met him. And finally, filling out the evening, Joe Renone. Joe, good evening.
Hey, guys, good evening.
Joe,
how you doing, Joe?
How you doing?
I'm doing good. How you guys doing?
Wonderful,
Very
thank
good.
you. Joe, why don't you tell our listeners a little bit about what you do, and you did a great job of videography of the evening.
Joe was the best find of the whole night.
Absolutely. I want to say something about Joe. When he's done talking, I want to say a little something about Joe.
We all get
Yeah,
something good to say about Joe.
I'm sure everybody does. Is it a family show? So my name is Joe Renone. I'm a paranormal investigator in the New England area, and the circles run tight. You see people time after time at different gatherings, and you just develop a friendship. Like I've developed a friendship with Jeff and Joni, and now you guys. So it just keeps extending and growing out, you know. And I really enjoy that part of it, you know. It's meeting other folks that